The moment my best friend showed up at my apartment, looking like he'd just been dragged through a tornado, I knew something was seriously wrong. I mean, it's not every day your usually put together, confident buddy stumbles in, eyes red, shirt half untucked, and here's the kicker, barefoot and wearing nothing but a pair of boxers. Undressed from the waist up, completely disheveled, and clearly desperate for somewhere to crash. That night was supposed to be normal, just the two of us grabbing some beers and catching up on the usual nonsense. Instead, it became the start of a night I couldn't have predicted, even if my life depended on it. So yeah, here I am, sitting on the edge of my bed, trying not to stare too much while my best friend, let's call him Max because that's his name, is sprawled out like he's claimed the whole mattress as his personal kingdom. And honestly, I'm not sure if it's the fact that he's lying there half undressed or the fact that he's clearly broken that's got me so off balance. Max has always been the kind of guy who handles his shit. The steady one. The guy who never lets his feelings get the best of him. But tonight, he looks like a kid who just got his heart stomped on. Here's the thing about Max. We've been best friends since college, inseparable since day one. He's the witty, sarcastic one to my more laid-back, easygoing vibe. Together, we've navigated everything from shitty jobs to disastrous dates. Until now, I never really saw him this vulnerable. And now, with him hogging my bed and the clock creeping past midnight, I'm realizing just how little I actually know about what's happening under that rough exterior. Earlier that evening, we were at our favorite bar, the kind of dive that everyone knows but no one really talks about. Max seemed fine at first, joking, laughing, even flirting a bit with the bartender like he usually does. Then, out of nowhere, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, and something inside him just cracked. He barely said a word after that, just drained his beer and muttered that he needed to get out of there. I didn't press him for details, figured it was probably a breakup or something messy with his boyfriend. I mean, Max and his boyfriend Jake weren't exactly on the same page lately. I'd heard the rumors, the awkward silences when Max's phone lit up with messages, the sudden cancellations. But I never imagined this kind of fallout. Max looking like he'd been run over by a train, then showing up at my place like this. He barely spoke as I helped him inside, stripping off his jacket and tossing it on a chair. He didn't even ask for his clothes back. Instead, he just collapsed onto my bed, pulling the covers over himself like they were a shield against whatever was gnawing at him. The vulnerability in that moment hit me harder than I expected. I sat there, trying to figure out what to do, what to say, because obviously, this was more than just some fight or petty argument. There was a storm raging behind his eyes, and it was clear he needed more than just a night of sleep to fix it. And honestly, as much as I wanted to give him space, the way he was looking at me, no words, just raw, broken trust, it made something inside me twist. What happened between Max and Jake? Why did Max come here like this? And maybe, just maybe, how do I help my best friend when the one he loved just shut the door on him? I don't know what the next few hours will bring, but I can already tell this night is going to change everything, between us, and maybe even for me. Because sometimes, the people closest to you end up revealing things you never saw coming. And sometimes, they make you face parts of yourself you didn't even know were there. I sat on the edge of my bed, watching Max breathe under the covers, feeling like I should say something, anything, to break the silence. But words felt useless, like shouting at a storm, and he wasn't ready to talk. So I just stayed quiet, the room filled with that heavy kind of stillness that only happens when someone's hurting but can't bring themselves to say it out loud. After a few minutes, Max shifted, the blanket slipping off his shoulder, and I caught sight of a bruise near his collarbone. I hadn't noticed it when he first came in. My brain spun for a second. Was this from Jake? An argument gone physical, maybe? I felt my stomach twist. I didn't want this to be true, but the bruise was there, undeniable. Max, I finally said, voice low so I didn't scare him off. Are you okay? I mean, with Jake? What happened? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he pulled the blanket tighter around himself, like trying to disappear. Then, with a shaky laugh, he said, "You have no idea, man. I thought it was solid. I thought we were good. Then bam, He dumps me like I'm some side project he's done with, I nodded. I'm sorry. That please, miss. Yeah, well, you're great at stating the obvious. He scoffed, but it was a small thing, the kind of joke you make when you're trying not to fall apart. He looked over at me with tired eyes. I don't know where to go from here. I rubbed the back of my neck, feeling awkward but wanting to help. You can stay here as long as you need. No judgment, no questions if you don't want. Just space to breathe. Max half smiled, the first genuine thing of the night. Thanks, man. Seriously. He paused, then added, It's the first time I felt safe in a while. That surprised me more than I expected. Me? Safe? I guess I never really thought of my place like that, but hearing it from him, it hit me differently. Maybe there was something between us I'd been ignoring. We spent the next hour in that quiet bubble together, me sitting awkwardly on the bed, Max sprawled out, occasionally drifting in and out of sleep. I wanted to reach out to touch his arm or hand, but I held back. Didn't want to make it weird or push him away. At one point, Max shifted again, and his hand brushed mine. It was accidental, but suddenly, the electricity between us was impossible to ignore. My heart jumped, and I caught myself staring at his face, trying to read what was going on behind those tired eyes. Can I ask you something? Max's voice was barely above a whisper. Anything. Have you ever felt like maybe you wanted more? Like, with me? I choked a little on my own breath. This was unexpected. I mean, I'd thought about it, sure. We'd always had this unspoken thing underneath all the joking around. But hearing him say it out loud, it shook me. Yeah, I admitted. More than once. His eyes searched mine, that vulnerable look still there but mixed with something else. Hope? Fear? Desire? I thought maybe it was just me. No, I said firmly. Definitely not just you. That moment stretched, hanging between us, thick and fragile, until Max gave a soft, tired laugh. God, this is so messed up. We're allowed to be messed up, I replied, and honestly, I meant it. Life didn't come with neat little boxes for feelings or friendships or love. Sometimes it was messy and complicated and exactly what you didn't expect. He scooted closer, still under the blanket, but closer enough that I could feel the heat radiating off his skin. I'm sorry I barged in like this. Undressed, no less. I smiled, shaking my head. You're welcome to crash here undressed anytime. Max grinned, that old familiar spark flickering back to life. You're something else. We sat there, the quiet now filled with something different, possibility. And just as I was about to say something to break the tension, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. I glanced at the screen and froze. It was Jake. Do you want me to answer it? I asked, heart pounding. Nat Max shook his head. No, let it go. So I silenced the phone and put it away. For now, Jake was off the table. Tonight was about Max and me, about whatever this was, between us starting to take shape. I wasn't sure where it would lead, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going anywhere. As the night deepened, Max finally drifted off to sleep, this time without the weight I saw earlier. I lay there watching him, wondering how I'd missed all the signs, how I'd been so blind to what was right in front of me. Maybe some friendships are just waiting for the right moment to shift. And maybe, just maybe, this was ours. Morning came slow and gray, sunlight filtering through the blinds and casting thin stripes across Max's bare shoulder. I was still sitting on the bed, half dazed, half watching him sleep. There was something peaceful about seeing him like that, vulnerable, unguarded, so far from the guy who showed up last night like he'd been through hell. He stirred first, blinking against the light, and then slowly sat up, running a hand through his messy hair. Hey, he said, voice thick with sleep and something else, maybe regret or embarrassment. Hey, I replied, trying to sound casual but feeling anything but. Morning. He glanced down at himself, still in the boxers he crashed in, and then around the room like he was trying to piece together how he ended up here. I'm sorry for dropping in like that, undressed and all. I laughed, shaking my head. Like I said, you're welcome anytime. Just maybe next time throw on a shirt? He smiled, a little embarrassed but genuine. Deal. There was a pause, the kind that makes you realize things have shifted between you. I cleared my throat, not quite ready to step off this new tightrope we were walking. Do you want coffee? I can make some. Max nodded. Yeah, that'd be good. While I headed to the kitchen, I couldn't help sneaking glances at him. He looked tired but different, less broken maybe. Or maybe just less guarded. I didn't know how to explain it, but something had changed overnight. When I came back with 2 mugs, he was sitting cross-legged on my bed, staring out the window. I sat beside him, the warmth of the coffee mugs between our hands grounding us. So I said, trying to sound casual, even though my heart was racing, "What happened with Jake?" "If you want to talk about it." Max sighed, running a hand through his hair again. "It was everything and nothing, you know? One day, we were fine. The next, he said he didn't feel the same way anymore. No fights, no warnings. Just done." I nodded. "That's rough." "Yeah. It's like all those months of planning, arguing about stupid little stuff, trying to make it work, it meant nothing to him. And here I am, feeling like an idiot for thinking it meant something to me." I reached out, lightly resting my hand on his arm. "It meant something to you, and that's real." Doesn't matter what he thought. He looked down at my hand, then back at me, his eyes softening. "Thanks." There was a beat, and then Max shifted closer, the space between us suddenly feeling charged. "You know, I've always envied you a little." I blinked. "Me? Why?" "Because you're steady. You don't get all tangled up in your feelings like I do. You're the guy people can count on." I smiled, but honestly, I wasn't sure I deserved that. I have my moments. No, seriously, you're like the rock in the group, and here I am, falling apart over a guy who didn't even care. I swallowed hard, feeling my chest tighten. Maybe you don't need a rock. Maybe you need someone who gets the messiness. He looked at me like that was the most interesting thing he'd ever heard. "What are you saying?" I hesitated, then leaned in just a little. "I'm saying you can be messy with me. Hell, you can be undressed with me, and not just physically." My heart was pounding, but I kept my voice steady. "I've wanted to say that for a while." Max's breath hitched, and suddenly the room felt smaller, warmer, like we were the only 2 people in the world. Then, almost hesitantly, he reached for my hand. "Maybe being with you wouldn't be such a bad thing," he said quietly. I squeezed his hand, the relief and hope crashing over me all at once. Maybe it wouldn't. For a moment, we just sat there, hands entwined, the past and the future colliding quietly between us. Just then, my phone buzzed again. This time, I ignored it. Jake could wait. Max rested his head on my shoulder, and I realized that sometimes the best kind of healing comes from unexpected places and the people who already know all your broken parts. We didn't have all the answers yet, but for the first time in a long time, neither of us felt alone. And maybe that was enough to start with. We stayed like that for a while, Max's head resting lightly against my shoulder as we sipped the cooling coffee. Outside, the city was waking up. Distant honks, the rumble of buses, the quiet shuffle of pedestrians starting their day. But inside my apartment, time felt suspended, like the rest of the world had paused just for us. After a few minutes, Max pulled back and looked at me, something unreadable flickering in his eyes. "So what now? I mean, I'm kind of homeless emotionally and physically right now. I don't even have clean clothes, and I'm pretty sure I stink." I laughed. "Well, the laundry room's free this afternoon, and I've got plenty of deodorant." He smirked. "You're a lifesaver. Also, I owe you a serious thank you." His gaze softened, and for a moment, I thought he might say more, but then he changed the subject. "You were saying something earlier about wanting to say something for a while." I shifted awkwardly, the words suddenly feeling heavier than before. "Yeah. I guess I've been scared to mess up what we already have. I didn't want to risk losing you as a friend." Max's expression softened, and he reached out, brushing a stray lock of hair from my forehead. Sometimes, risk is the only way to find out what's real. There it was again, that vulnerability that made me want to protect him and pull him closer at the same time. I swallowed hard. "I've always thought you were amazing, you know, even when you were being a pain in the ass." He laughed, the sound light and genuine. "I'm full of surprises." And you're not just my best friend anymore, I said, voice low and steady. I want to see if there's something more between us. If you want that too. Max hesitated, then nodded slowly. Yeah, I want that. I don't want to be alone in this. We sat in silence for a beat, the weight of what we just admitted settling around us. Then Max stood up, stretching like he was trying to shake off the remnants of last night's chaos. I watched him, the way the sunlight caught the curve of his jaw, how his eyes held a mix of hope and fear. So, he said, breaking the silence with a grin, coffee and laundry today. And maybe, if you're lucky, I'll let you buy me dinner. Deal, I said, standing to follow him into the small bathroom so he could clean up. As he closed the door behind him, I couldn't help but feel like something new was starting. Fragile, uncertain, but full of promise. And I was ready to take that chance, no matter how messy it might get. Later that afternoon, while Max was in the laundry room, I paced my apartment, nerves buzzing. I thought about how last night had flipped everything upside down. How the boundaries we'd never crossed were suddenly blurred. I wasn't just thinking about friendship anymore. I was thinking about late-night talks turning into whispered confessions, about holding him when he cried, about waking up next to him and feeling like maybe, finally, I was home. When Max came back, fresh and clean in a hoodie and jeans that fit him perfectly, I felt my heart catch in my throat. He looked good, better than good, and the easy smile he gave me made all the nerves vanish for a second. You ready for dinner? I asked, grabbing my jacket. Absolutely, he said, and maybe a little nervous. Me too, I admitted. But that's a good thing, right? He nodded, eyes shining. Yeah, it means it's real. We headed out together, the city bustling around us, but somehow it was like the world had carved out a little bubble just for the two of us. I felt the electricity in the space between our shoulders, the subtle brush of his hand against mine as we walked. Neither of us reached for the other, not yet, but the possibility hung in the air, thick, warm, undeniable. At the restaurant, over plates of pasta and half-empty glasses of wine, the conversation flowed easier than I expected. We laughed, teased, shared stories we'd never told anyone else. I caught glimpses of that old Max, the one who could light up a room, but with a new layer of softness that made my chest squeeze. Later, walking him back to my place, the night air cool against our skin, Max stopped and looked up at me. I don't want this to be a one-time thing, he said quietly. Neither do I said, stepping closer. And then, finally, we crossed that line, a gentle, tentative kiss that felt like the promise of something real. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours, and in that moment, nothing else mattered. We pulled apart, breathless, and I smiled. So, undressed nights and messy mornings? Max laughed, eyes sparkling with mischief. Sounds like a plan. As we went inside, the door closing softly behind us, I realized that sometimes the best things come when you least expect them, and that maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something neither of us saw coming, but both desperately needed. Once the door clicked shut behind us, the energy in the room shifted, like the city noise got muffled, and it was just Max and me, finally in a space that felt, I don't know, ours. We moved closer without even really thinking about it, like gravity pulling two things that were always meant to be together, but just hadn't figured it out yet. He looked up at me with those eyes. Honest, a little vulnerable, but full of something fierce too. So, what now? He asked, voice soft but definitely loaded with meaning. I smiled, feeling a mix of nervousness and excitement. Well, we could sit down and talk about the future, or we could throw caution to the wind and see where this goes. Max shrugged, that easy grin spreading across his face again. Yeah, throwing caution out the window sounds about right. And honestly, that felt like the perfect answer. We'd spent enough time tiptoeing around feelings, pretending things were simple. But they weren't. Not anymore. Things were complicated, messy, and terrifyingly real. And somehow, that scared me less when he was standing there next to me. We didn't rush into anything, though. Instead, we sat on the couch, inches apart, just breathing each other in. Max's hand found mine, fingers lacing together naturally, like they'd been waiting for this moment too. I'd never been the type to rush, and neither was he, which made everything feel that much more genuine. "You know," Max started, breaking the comfortable silence, "I always thought love was supposed to be easy. Like, if it's real, it just works." I laughed softly. "Yeah, me too. But real love? It's more like this. Awkward and messy, but worth it." He nodded slowly, eyes reflecting the dim light in the room. "I'm scared, though. Scared of getting hurt again." "I get that," I said, squeezing his hand. "But I'm not Jake. I'm here, and I want to be here." The honesty in my voice seemed to settle something inside him, because he leaned his head against my shoulder and sighed. "Thank you for not giving up on me." We stayed like that for a while longer, just holding space for each other. Later, when Max finally got up to grab a blanket, I realized how much I wanted to protect this fragile new thing growing between us. Over the next few days, things slowly started to find a rhythm. We spent mornings drinking coffee together, afternoons wandering the city, and evenings curled up watching movies or just talking about everything and nothing. It wasn't perfect. There were awkward moments, unspoken fears, and the occasional tension when the past crept back in. But it was real. One afternoon, we found ourselves in a tiny bookstore, tucked away on a quiet street. Max was flipping through a book on classic movies, and I was watching him, the way his eyes lit up when he found something he liked. I realized in that moment that I wanted to be the person who saw him like that every day, the person who made him feel safe enough to be himself. "Hey," I said, catching his attention. "Can I ask you something?" He looked up, curious. "Shoot. Do you think you're ready for us? Like really ready?" Max paused, contemplating his answer. Then he smiled, a little shy but certain. "I think I am. I don't want to be just your best friend anymore. I want to be your person." That admission hit me like a punch to the chest, in the best way possible. I want that too. Later that night, after the world had gone quiet outside, Max and I sat on my balcony, wrapped in a shared blanket, and watching the city lights flicker. The silence between us wasn't empty. It was full of promises and possibilities. "Remember when I showed up here, a mess, half undressed, and completely broken?" Max asked with a teasing grin. I laughed. How could I forget? It's not every day your best friend crashes on your bed like that. "Well, I guess it worked out," he said softly, leaning his head on my shoulder. "Yeah," I agreed, heart pounding. It really did. As the night deepened, I realized something important. Sometimes the best kind of love begins in the most unexpected ways, with a friend, a broken heart, and a night neither of us will ever forget. And now, with Max by my side, I was ready to see where this messy, beautiful journey would take us. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of Max humming in the kitchen. I stayed in bed a little longer, watching the sunlight spill in, catching the way it lit up his hair. He was making coffee, moving around like he owned the place, which, honestly, at this point, he kinda did. It was a small thing, but it made me realize how comfortable he'd become here, and not just physically. He was starting to feel like part of my life in a way that went deeper than just friendship. When he noticed me watching, Max gave that crooked smile, the one that always made my heart skip. "Morning," he said, his voice still a bit rough from sleep. "Morning," I replied, sitting up and rubbing the sleep out of my eyes. "Coffee smells good." "Damn right," he said, pouring me a cup. I figured since I was shacking up in your place, I might as well put my barista skills to use. I took the cup and smiled. "Best decision you ever made." There was a comfortable silence as we sipped the coffee, the kind that only happens when two people know each other well enough to just be without words. But then, Max cleared his throat and looked at me with those serious eyes I'd been avoiding lately. "Hey," he started hesitantly. "Can I be honest about something?" "Always," I said, setting the cup down. "I'm scared. Not just about us, but everything else. What people will think, how Jake might react, if this, whatever it is, will actually work." I nodded, understanding more than he probably thought. "Yeah, it's scary, but you're not alone in this. Whatever comes, we face it together." He smiled, a little more relaxed. "Thanks. That means a lot." Later that day, we decided to go out for a walk. The city was buzzing with energy, but we found a quiet park bench near the river and just sat, watching the water flow. Max fiddled with a pebble, and I could tell he was wrestling with something. "Do you think we should tell people?" he asked quietly. I thought about it. The truth was, I wanted to shout it from the rooftops, but I also knew Max needed time. "We'll tell them when we're ready. No rush." He looked relieved. "Good. I'm not ready for a parade just yet." We laughed, the tension easing between us. It felt like we were figuring this out as we went along, two people navigating something new and unfamiliar, but desperately wanting it to work. That night, back at my place, we cooked dinner together. Max was surprisingly good at chopping vegetables without turning it into a disaster, and we talked about everything and nothing. It was the kind of evening I dreamed about, but never allowed myself to believe could happen. After dinner, we settled on the couch, the room dimly lit by a single lamp. Max leaned into me, resting his head on my chest. I wrapped my arms around him, feeling the steady beat of his heart against mine. "You know," he said softly, "I never thought I'd find this. Not after what happened with Jake." "Me neither," I admitted. "But sometimes the best things come when you least expect them." He lifted his head to look at me, eyes shining. "I'm glad it's you." "Me too," I whispered. We kissed then, slow, tentative at first, but growing more certain. It wasn't about rushing or pressure. It was about two people finally letting down their walls and trusting each other. Afterwards, as we lay tangled together, I realized how much I'd missed this. Connection, closeness, the feeling of being seen and accepted. With Max, it felt like home. Over the next few weeks, our relationship deepened in ways I hadn't anticipated. We balanced the excitement of new love with the comfort of friendship, supporting each other through the messy, complicated parts. One afternoon, Max invited me over to his place for the first time since the breakup. It was small and a little chaotic, but it was his space. As I looked around at the photos, the books, the little things that made it his, I felt honored to be part of it. We spent the evening cooking, laughing, and sharing stories. As the night wore on, Max pulled me close and said, "This feels right, like maybe we're exactly where we're supposed to be." I smiled, feeling the same. "Yeah, I think we are." There were still challenges ahead, old wounds, lingering doubts, and the inevitable questions from friends and family. But for the first time in a long time, I felt ready to face them all. Because love, real love, isn't about perfection. It's about showing up, being vulnerable, and choosing each other every day. And with Max by my side, I knew I was ready for whatever came next. Months had passed since that night, when Max showed up at my door, half undressed and broken. We'd moved slowly, cautiously, learning how to be more than friends without losing what made us close in the first place. There were awkward moments, honestly, and some days when the past felt like a shadow hovering too close. But we faced all of it together, day by day. One chilly evening, we found ourselves back at my apartment, the same place where it all began. The city lights shimmered through the window, and the soft hum of distant traffic filled the quiet room. Max sat close to me on the couch, his fingers intertwined with mine, warm and steady. "I never thought this would turn out like this," he said softly, eyes searching mine. "Neither did I admitted. "But here we are, and I wouldn't change a thing." He smiled, the kind of smile that reaches deep and makes you feel like you're exactly where you're meant to be. "You made me believe in love again. Not the perfect kind, but the real kind. Messy and imperfect, but ours." I pulled him closer, resting my forehead against his. "That's what matters." For a moment, we just held each other, the quiet between us full of everything we didn't need to say. It struck me how far we'd come, from that fragile night when he needed a place to crash, to this, two people choosing each other, flaws and all. Later, as Max got ready to leave, he paused in the doorway, turning back to me with a softness that made my heart ache. "Thank you," he whispered, "for being patient, for not giving up, for everything." I smiled, brushing a strand of hair from his face. "Thank you for trusting me." And in that simple exchange, I realized love wasn't about grand gestures or fairy tale endings. It was about showing up, day after day, holding space for each other's scars and dreams. As Max closed the door behind him, I stayed by the window a little longer, watching the city breathe beneath the night sky. I felt full, Grateful for the unexpected journey, for the friend who became so much more. Sometimes, the best kind of love sneaks in when you least expect it, wakes you up, and stays. And I knew, without a doubt, this was ours.